What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Turn the Jets podcast. I'm your host, Will Parkinson, at Will Pod 11 on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. TOJ Talks, Badlands, all 32. On to hop on here, quick 15 or so on Tuesday afternoon. We're about 9 days out from the NFL draft. We'll have a much longer form episode Thursday and Saturday, and then a ton of content obviously coming your way next week. But want to give you something, because it's been a few days, I guess, since, about Friday of last week, 4 or 5 days ago. I want to kind of just start off and talk about a couple minutes about the live show and how unbelievably fucking awesome that was. It's obviously a really cool thing that, Joe and Connor have been working on for the last 10, 12, 14 years, whatever, 15 years, whatever it is. And, I've been a part of this thing for the last 4 or 5 years and, took over the TOJ Pod, and just seeing the way it's grown and the way the company and the way the brand has grown in the last, couple of years specifically. And it was amazing. It's kind of a culmination of a lot of different things for a lot of different people, and the friends, family, different support I had there was unbelievable. The countless hundreds of you that came up and were like, "Hey, man, really love the show," and all these different things was amazing. It was really cool to see that. Obviously, be able to talk some Jets, talk some football with you guys, and meet a lot of you in person, crush some beers, did the whole thing. So I just want to kind of start off and obviously say thank you for everybody. We most certainly have an event in August. Hopefully 500-600 of you in person, another 500-600 of you, able to kind of virtually, listen to everything and be a part of it that can't make it in person. So there'll be a lot more to follow. There's some cool surprises that'll kind of leak out throughout the week that you'll see. But you want to kind of hop on here again 9 days after the NFL draft, just some kind of NFL news and notes that specifically could affect the Jets, leading into next week. And I'll just start this off by saying, I think we've talked a lot about it. I know I've talked a lot about it. I know Joe, Connor, Paul, Meeks, DA, like Dan, the whole gang Jake has talked a lot about it. But obviously this draft is massive for the Jets, right? Like, no question about it. Not saying anything we don't already know. There's a lot of different things that can kind of unfold on draft night that may affect where and when. I think we kind of all feel like it's Membu or Warren at 7. Hey, if Graham gets there, we don't expect him to, but if he does, maybe it's a bit more of a conversation. I think everyone kind of assumed maybe, even a Campbell too. Does that throw a wrench in the mix? I personally would take Membo and Warren over Graham and Campbell, just based on what the Jets need and maybe a better fit and all these different things. I like Graham. I don't think I'm quite as high as everybody else is on Graham, but I think he's a really good player that I would take in the top 14, top 10 of this draft. I just don't know if the way the Jets are at with right tackle, tight end, receiver, things like that, I don't know if another first-round pick investment, on the defensive line is, and a really deep defensive tackle class is maybe the best use of assets. Again, I like Campbell. I think he's a good football player, but I don't know, he'd be the first guy in 15 years to go in the top 100 with that wingspan. We've literally never seen it. And again, I think I've used this phrase before when it comes to the Jets. I'm good on the Jets being the team to figure it out and be the outlier team. I'd like to see the Jets do what the really other successful franchises do and take the solidified metrics and do the things that are, kind of necessary to make sure this thing kind of hits. And I think Campbell's good, but I don't know, man. It's like you're asking him to play a position he's never played before, and you have some questions whether he's even a tackle. Then are you moving AVT, another guy who's really better suited as a guard to tackle? There's a lot of factors there. That's why a guy like Membu, obviously, it makes a ton of sense. Zone-based scheme, really physical run blockers, good in pass pro, good athlete. We saw the athlete obviously in person. Should have been obviously mobile. Unfortunately, had some stomach and things like that. But obviously we saw it on full display at the Combine. We saw it obviously on tape for the last couple of years in the SEC. And then obviously a guy like Warren. I think I've talked ad nauseum about Tyler Warren, obviously, but the closer we get to the draft, it feels like he's a guy who every Jets fan, I don't know, 3 months ago was like, dude, we have to draft Tyler Warren. And now it feels like no, I don't want Tyler Warren. I don't know if he's as good as Colston Loveland is good. I'm open to Colston Loveland too. I think he's an awesome player. Warren feels like a guy that can establish a physical nature and a physical tone to their offense. He's a guy that can be a really good secondary pass catcher. Again, so could Loveland and other, the Mason Taylors of the world and things like that. 100% agree. It feels like there's a world, and I've talked about this a bunch, where you could go Warren, Besh, Ozzie Trapillo, and then in round 4 you get a defensive tackle. It's a run stuffer. In round 5 you pick up a safety, an additional tight end that could be kind of more of a designated blocker, and then you can free up Warren in the pass game? Or is it taking another interior offensive lineman to kind of add its depth? Is it taking a corner, a linebacker, edge rusher? There's a million things they could kind of hit on. I'd really like to see them go offense early on in this draft, early and often. I think play at pick 42 and 73, at least one of those has to be a playmaker, if not both. And ideally a pass catcher. I just think, you look at it and you think, hey, could they go Membu, Mason, Taylor, Jalen Noel? Like, I don't know, man. That's pretty fucking good. I'd feel pretty good about that. Could Trey Harris fall and they take, a Trey Harris at pick 73? Do they go Kyle Williams and Tay Felton on day 3 and they think, hey, we can, we kind of figure it out that way. Again, there's a million things, they could kind of do, but the couple things around the NFL that we're kind of hearing, I guess, and figuring out over the last, I don't know, 24, 48 hours, a lot of Shador buzz. It felt like for a while he's not going in the top 8 for sure. And maybe it's at 9. If not, it's not till 22 or 21, and then late into the 20s because the Giants, Browns, Steelers, Rams, etc. trade up or stay put and develop them. Giants held a private workout today with Shador, and again, and now the speculation is, who are they going to take him at 3? And if you're a Jets fan, and I guess you're kind of hoping that's the case, right? Obviously, another good player could potentially fall to you. Does that slot down a Mason Graham? Does that slot down an Abdul Carter? What does that do to Travis Hunter? Obviously, I would assume Hunter would just go 4 in that point if he didn't go 2, right? Or head to the Browns, get back in this thing. Or Abdul Carter falls to 4 now. Now he's a Patriot, which means Will Campbell's going to fall. But then do the Jags take Will Campbell? And then that means, Mason Graham could fall to 6. And then, hey, is Genty on the board at 7? And the Jets are enticed to take Ashton Genty and trade Bruce Hall. Like, there's a million opportunities in different situations. But Shador going in the top, 7 where, hey, a lot of folks want the Jets to trade back, right? And accumulate assets. There's such a good plethora of talent between picks 20 and 80 that, does someone, want to jump the Saints? And, Dan Morgan, the Panthers GM, said, we're open for business at pick 8. You wonder if you're the Jets, you go, hey, we're open for business too. And hey, we move back to 21. We end up with Colston Loveland, an extra first-round pick and an extra third. And wow, we just addressed all these different needs and we got a similar caliber player. Like, there's a million different things there. Do the Bears move up because the Bears want to get their hands on Tyler Warren? Do they want to get their hands on Mike Green and get ahead of Carolina and the Jets can move back and still get Warren? There's just so many possibilities there. But again, Shador going earlier is better for the Jets. I still don't think he's going that early. I think it's the Saints, or it's still maybe this is more of a trade back situation into the first round, if you're the Giants. But yeah, look, that's a big one. Tyron Smith retired a few hours ago. Again, I just want to hit on this because I think there's a lot of revisionist history with a lot of these Jets moves, right? And we sit there and we criticize the Jets and, oh my God, they signed another old guy. I don't take it as that at all. It didn't work. Funny enough, Tyron was healthy all offseason, healthy all camp, looked amazing in camp. I was like, wow, man, he still's got it. And they get out there, and by game 3, game 4, it was like, man, the body might be cooked. And, obviously there's a lot of questions coming into the year. Hey, is the back going to hold up? And, it fades fast, especially at that size. And he's a guy who's going to walk in the Hall of Fame person, Hall of Fame player. I think there's an invaluable amount of knowledge and things like that he was able to share with an Olu Fashanu and a Elijah Vera Tucker, a Joe Tittman, even a John Simpson, how to lead, by example, how to do things right, how to be a professional. Those things do matter. And I know we maybe overblow that a little bit in sports, but I don't think I think in this case, this is an entirely valuable deal. He only ended up making $9 million of the 20 he was potentially going to make. Obviously, again, had a bad year and, ended up he had the neck thing and got benched and things like that kind of coincided with each other and shut it down. And obviously Olu started to play, but I don't blame the Jets at all. They had a 41-year-old Aaron Rodgers, Tyron Smith's on the market. It was an incentive-laden deal. They were able to kind of groom and let their young, future franchise left tackle take his time getting on the field. So, I'm not going to sit here and there's plenty of moves to kill the Jets on. That one to me was, I'll do it again. Maybe I wouldn't do it again, but I don't blame them for doing it. A couple of other news and notes. Abdul Carter obviously takes a visit to Foxborough. Again, that kind of another indication. Could he be, be in play at pick 4? And again, what's that mean for Will Campbell of sorts? There's interest apparently the Patriots have a lot of interest in Jalen Walker, a player I love, everyone knows, but again, that would open up a potential guy on the offensive side of the football for the Jets. So, what does that mean? Jalen Ramsey is set to be traded. Look, a couple of different things here. And this is obviously related to the Jets. They play in the division, and Garrett Wilson damn near broke Jalen Ramsey's ankles about 55 times last year, really the last 2 years. The Dolphins unnecessarily extended Jalen Ramsey to make him the highest paid corner by $100,000 last year. In early September. To trade him a year later, not even a year later, when they're going to incur such a big dead cap hit the next 2 years, it's just horrible business. And if I'm Steve Ross, I'm sitting there like, what are we doing? I expect them to probably move off Tyreek Hill as well. There's some rumors, hey, we're Ramsey and Tyreek Hill maybe not in the best of relationships. And, obviously Tyreek quit on the team at the end of the year. So, what does that mean? Maybe they retain him and they trade to Ramsey. Who knows? But it's one less superstar level name, at least in the division. Miami has a chance to be pretty bad. I'm not sure. They got to have a really nice draft here, and they got to address safety and tackle and interior offensive line, and probably add another receiver now at this point and different things in kind of corner. But yeah, they're in a weird spot where they're paying a lot of superstar names and a lot of big time money to a lot of players, but there's a lot of holes on that roster. And again, you can say the same thing about a lot of different teams, but again, Miami, I think if the Jets do what they should do next year in terms of being competitive, losing 2 to Miami next year is unacceptable. Losing 2 to, New England is going to be unacceptable, regardless of whether this team's, trying to shoot for a playoff spot or not. Those days have got to be over. It's got to out with the Robert Saleh, getting smoked in the division outside of a few Buffalo games. But last thing I'll say on the Jets kind of draft here as we wrap. Again, much longer form episode Thursday, much longer Saturday, and then a bunch of stuff next week. And a couple surprises coming to, if you're not in the Badlands Discord or Patreon, you want to hop in there. There'll be a few surprises there. Obviously, Jets are, within, they're in draft meetings now. They're, players are working out at the facility. A lot of different kind of shit, things moving and shaking. I would say the one thing I take away from, we've talked a lot about what are they going to do on offense with Tanner Engstrand? What are they going to do on defense with Steve Wilkes? What's everything going to look like and all these different things? We've talked a million times. I am so curious to see what does an Aaron Glenn and a Darren Mucci player look like from a draft perspective. We know from free agency is one free agency, and we'll see. Obviously, there's still a lot more guys to be able to be added post June 1 when the Jets will open up a bunch of cap space. Veterans like that aren't going to sign anytime soon. They'd rather work out as long as they can on their own and see what rosters look like post-draft. But, Aaron Glenn's talked about arm length. He's talked about broad jump. He's talked about 40-yard dash and speed. He's talked about vertical jump and explosiveness, like high character, guys that want to win, guys that want to punch you in the fucking mouth, all those different things. Like those are all things he's mentioned to an extent, but it'll be interesting to see draft weekend, especially maybe when we get to day 2 and day 3. What does that Aaron Glenn and Darren Mucci player really look like in terms of, is there going to be a pattern built for future years? I think be able to say, hey, the Jets were big on 30 visits, big on combine visits. The Jets were big guys with, raw athletic score, like they were super high. Like what is it based on more tape? They have to be captains. Like there's all these different things. And when the new regime is such an interesting and kind of fun perspective to see what's going to kind of unfold. Again, be back on the feed Thursday. Joe and Connor be following up this with a pod and then a war room, I think mock draft. Connor's doing a 7-round mock. So go check out Badlands YouTube, Patreon, etc. Turn on the Jets. Appreciate it for listening, and we'll talk to you guys soon.